Hello everyone, my name is Kamara Lee and I am the founder and CEO of Talent Plus. Welcome back to our channel. It is time to get talented. On this week's episode of Talented, I have with me Mrs. Sonia Edwards, an HR professional in St. Kitts and Nevis with over 20 years experience. Sonia is the founder and CEO of the Human Resource Solution, and she's also currently the Human Resource Manager at API Harrow on St. Kitts. Welcome, Sonia. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you. So good to be here. I'm doing pretty good today.
I am really excited to have you on this week's episode. I know it will be a very exciting discussion.
Yes, I'm looking forward.
On this week's episode, Sonia and I will be discussing the impact of the Covid-19 pandemic on the workforce in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we will be having these discussions, one, looking at the employees, and secondly, looking at the employers. And so, Sonia, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant changes for us all. What is your observation or feedback on what has been happening in the workforce in terms of the employee standpoint?
Right. So it has impacted the employee on various fronts. Mm-hmm. Firstly, a number of workers have found themselves totally without a job. All right, based on the industry that they're working in, they had long periods of time when they were unable to go to work and therefore unable to earn their regular wage. Some persons experienced reduced hours. Some persons, additionally, those who experienced reduced hours and long absence from work, besides the financial impact, there has been an emotional impact as well.
Definitely.
Work is such an important part of our everyday life, and we form a family, we form an emotional connection with our work. So to be disjointed and disconnected from work, and in some instances, not being able to get good communication flow to know what's going on, how your company is coping, how your other co-workers are coping, the regular interaction that you had with them. That really are just a couple of the impacts.
Yes, I definitely agree with you because, it is at the workplace we spend most of our time, and you're there from 8 to 4 p.m. or whether it's a shift system, you spend a lot of time at work, and we really build good and strong relationships in the workplace. So there has definitely been a fallout in terms of not just the financial, but the emotional and the mental impact as well. I know as employers and HR practitioners, it has been very difficult for us as well. There are several changes that we had to implement that impacted our employees, such as transitioning to working from home. And we have heard and observed, several things in that area in terms of the transition process. Any feedback from you there?
As we've mentioned, the involvement of HR in all of this transition, I just want to say that additionally, HR has the hats that HR normally wear has expanded. And so there has been a lot of demand on the services that we have been called on to provide. We've had to be really flexible, and it also required us to be open to learning, because this is a new situation for us.
Yes,
so
yes.
In terms of the dynamics of working from home, organizing the type of technical support that people would need, placing scheduling persons and knowing who is working when, who is working from where, what portion of the team is going to come in, and those who are going to come in, what we need to have in place based on the COVID guidelines and so on, what we need to have in place for them. So all those dynamics have put a lot of additional stress on the HR practitioner. But I think that most persons have been very, very resilient and being able to rise to the occasion. So in terms of working from home, there's been a lot of discussion on that. And personally, I experienced that working from home, the few weeks that I was doing that, people talk about the flexibility, but a recurring theme is how the line of demarcation just suddenly got eroded, and you're wondering, I seem to be always working because I can do it, at my
there's no cutoff.
Exactly, there's no cutoff. I might pause to do something personal, but 10 o'clock I'm still working. So that was some additional stress on employees, all around, I think.
Yes, it definitely brought about a new dynamic, both on the employer and the employee, and HR being on the side of the employer, because it is something that most of us were not used to. New to all of us, and we were learning along the way, but we had to implement fast. But when we look at St. Kitts and Nevis, there has been significant changes. The impact is real. We are still seeing it when we look at the hotel and tourism industry. All of the hotels closed. All of the employees were laid off. And so they found themselves in a position where some of them, they just didn't know. But all of them, they just didn't know. And so we found persons without a job and, with no sort of feedback as to when things will pick back up, and even as things are picking up slowly, if they will be called back in the near future. And so as the employee, there are things that it's a shift. If it is a shift that has happened, and it may mean that some employees, they have been within a particular sector for 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years. And this came about, something that we had and have no control over, but it requires a shift in terms of the industry or effective field. Is there any feedback that you have to give to persons or employees who found themselves in that situation, or what is your observation?
Certainly. So this has called for people to be more open and to be willing to be flexible. People, as you mentioned, may have worked in one industry for many years, the tourism industry, or I can think of manufacturing as well, where they had certain laid-offs because of the slowdown and inability to come in to accommodate all the persons to run those lines. What I would recommend and say to persons who may be in that situation still is to consider the skills that you have already used. For example, in the hospitality industry, I think of being highly driven by customer service. You've developed those customer service skills, interacting with the clients, having the mindset of pleasing the customer. So those are strong skills that can be transferable and readily welcome in other sectors. So think of, what do I have to offer? What experience do I have? What skills have I used? And how can I think of other industries that might be able to use these skills that I have already mastered?
Definitely. But it's easier said than done. A lot of them, they need a push, because in the hospitality industry, a lot of the times how you apply for a job is to complete an application form. And so this entire process may be new to them. And so while it may seem simple that I can just apply my skills in another area, there's a lot more that they will have to put into it that will cause some level of anxiety and frustration and so on. So when we talk about creating a resume, there are some persons who have never done that.
Exactly.
With over 20 years experience and so on. So it's really hard for persons to pick up and start again, and it is our reality.
Right. So one of the things that I would share also is to connect with others who may have more experience in job search than you do.
Yeah.
Right. So make sure that you find somebody in your church, somebody in your community, a relative who you can speak to. Don't try to go it alone. Reach out to somebody who might be able to give you some guidance in resume writing. When you share your information with them, these are my skills, they can help to translate that into a resume that is going to present who you are, so that a potential employer can see what you are offering. Do not go alone. Reach out to somebody to get some guidance. That's what I will recommend. And I can think of Talent Plus. That is one such support system that may be able to give some guidance in terms of how to go about looking for a job, selling yourself, and connecting to a potential employer.
Definitely. Thank you, Sonia. One of the things that we aim to do is to help candidates to be more job ready and better stand out in the eyes of the employer. Now, as we wrap up, this has caused an immense shift in terms of how employers go about doing their business, and in terms of looking for the right talent in the future. COVID has brought about so many changes. Let's take the work from home dynamic. We had employees who, let's say, a customer service position, who had to directly change over to a completely remote customer service position. And so it brought about some pressure in terms of on the employees and on the employer. And it also required, in some instances, some training and retraining to ensure that the employees were equipped with the knowledge, tools, and skill sets to execute what was required of them. It is not something that any of us anticipated, but it has definitely caused employers and HR practitioners to redesign or relook some of the things they look for when they're hiring persons in terms of their skill sets and their competencies and so on. Any feedback there?
Yes, definitely. So this whole pandemic and the shift that we had to make in terms of how we do business requires an openness to using technology and digital tools. Some people might shy away from this, but one little note just occurred to me is that everybody has a cell phone. Everybody is on WhatsApp. Everybody is downloading videos. People are creating videos. So this little gadget that we feel so familiar with is a good entrance and a good baptism into the digital world.
Yes,
the same way that you're able to learn how to use your cell phone suggests to you that you have the capability of expanding that and using digital tools that are going to set you up to be able to compete and to be able to provide what employers are now looking for. For those persons who have already, been using the computer, for example, my challenge to them would be open to explore some of the software that your company already has available that you may not be using. Microsoft Teams, for example, has become very popular at this time. And Zoom, Zoom, those are some of the tools. Be open to them. Learn from other people in your company, who are more au fait and more comfortable with them. So my key advice is be open to learning more about the digital world.
Definitely, I agree. But as I listen to you, another thought came to mind, and I'm not trying to be devil's advocate here. Sometimes we have high performers, employees who are just excellent at what they do. However, this transition based on the skill set required, they just maybe, not being able to handle the workload because they are not competent in the area of technology and so on. And so here we have a real problem. We had an employee before COVID who was a high performer. And then during COVID and even post-COVID, this same employee is struggling to use the necessary tools and software that we need to help us to function in today's world. Now, as employers, how do we deal with that? And it's difficult. So how do we deal with that situation? And it is something that is real and we have to look at.
Yes. So I think the owners stay a big part of the responsibility lays on the shoulders of the employer to properly help employees to transition, to make sure that they provide the necessary support, to make sure that they consider learning curves, how long it's going to take our employees to transition and to learn whatever new software. So I think it's important for employers to provide a supportive environment and to have some realistic timelines in terms of how long it's going to take their employees to transition to whatever new software that they are implementing.
Yes, definitely some training and retraining will be required, and giving the employee time, but providing that support is important. But I can't help to think that some employees, they may have this real fear of failure. This is not an area that I am strong in, so, and then ultimately it may mean that employers and HR practitioners, we are backed into a corner and placed in a position where we have to make a decision regarding this employee because they are no longer performing based on the standards required for our operations. And so there are a lot of dynamics that we have to look at in terms of the employee and the employer. But COVID has taught us so many things, and one of the things that I agree with you is that from the employee standpoint, turning adversity into opportunity. So previously you were in a customer service environment. How can you utilize your skill set to achieve something else or in another area? So looking at things that you can do, and as the employer, striking a balance and showing that support, because it is not easy for any of us all. One final point is, as HR practitioners, and this is something that I have to mention, it really took us by the hand, we had to jump into action, and it was something that took an emotional, mental, and everything that you can think of, every turn on us. And so what I saw coming out of this was HR persons leaning on other HR persons and the support coming out. And that ties into one of the things that you have been spearheading in St. Kitts and Nevis, which is the formation of an HR association. So I am going to ask you to just speak a little bit about the HR association and the goal of the association.
Right, so that brings us to SKNHRP. Get accustomed to that.
Yay!
Yes. Right, so we've created a steering committee to form a St. Kitts Nevis HR Professional HR Association. Yes. We've had one event to bring HR people together, but we are doing a lot of brainstorming and in terms of the shape of the organization and what we need to do, what type of operational guidelines that we're going to follow. The key goal, there are several, the goal is comprised of, several components. So one key area is to, as Kamara said, provide professional support for people who work in HR. Also provide opportunity for professional development. And one other area that I'd like to share is to work towards professionalizing HR in terms of creating certain standards that we would want to share and to commit to in our local environment. Definitely. To guide the operations of HR and ultimately to enhance the impact that the HR profession can have on the success of our business and our economy.
Yes, I am
In
definitely
brief.
looking forward. Definitely. I'm super excited, and you know that. I'm fortunate enough to be working with you on this initiative.
Yes, yes,
But
you are.
I think that I have full confidence, and I'm positive that once this is finalized, it will be a very great initiative on the island of St. Kitts and Nevis, because it is definitely a need. And as HR professionals, we will have one voice, and that
That's
is
right.
important.
That's
So,
right. So now they're going to hold us accountable to that. I mean,
yes.
yes, to that.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, Sonia, I want to thank you for joining me on this week's episode of Talented. It was a very rich and fruitful discussion, and I am sure that the viewers will enjoy it as well. So thank you once again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and it is time to get talented. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel.
Recruit, develop, transform.